Funding for this project made possible by a grant from the State Historical Fund, a program of the Colorado Historical Society.
It was just a swale, used as a wallow by the buffalo, merely a natural reservoir site which the settler had no more idea would one day become an important water storage basin than that the tiny settlement he was forming would someday be a town. Roy Ray.
The history of Windsor began in New York City's Newspaper Row, where Horace Greeley, flamboyant publisher of the New York Tribune, sent his agricultural editor on a fact-finding mission through several western states and territories. No other place provided Nathan Cook Meeker with as much inspiration as the Colorado Territory, where he found friendly settlers, breathtaking mountain vistas, and limitless opportunity. Upon his return to New York, an energized Meeker shared a utopian plan with the Tribune's readers.
I propose to unite with the proper persons for the establishment of a colony in Colorado Territory. The persons with whom I would be willing to associate must be temperance people, ambitious to establish a good society. Whatever professions and occupations enter into the formation of an intelligent, educated, and thrifty community should be embraced by this colony, and it should be the object to exhibit what is best in modern civilization. Nathan Meeker.
Meeker received an overwhelming 3,000 responses, later narrowing the pool to just 700 people. Following a meeting at New York's Cooper Union Building on December 23, 1869, the group formed a joint stock agricultural colonization company christened the Union Colony. The first settlers arrived in May 1870 at a site near the confluence of the Cache-la-Poudre and South Platte rivers. Union Colony boomed, and its residents named their new town Greeley in honor of Meeker's editor and mentor at the New York Tribune. Among the original Union Colony settlers was Edward Hollister, who, in addition to his farmland at the far northwest corner of the colony, began to purchase and homestead vast swaths of rolling prairie. Meanwhile, the Lake Supply Ditch Company constructed its principal reservoir, Lake Hollister, immediately north of Edward Hollister's homestead. The reservoir was one of the earliest irrigation projects in northern Colorado. The company expanded the body of water through the years, and it was variously known as Kern Reservoir and finally Windsor Lake. Yet nothing was more central to the development of Windsor than the arrival of the Greeley, Salt Lake, and Pacific Railway in 1882, its steel rails stretching across Edward Hollister's property and skirting the southern shore of the lake. Hollister and the Lake Supply Ditch Company realized that they owned land ideally suited for the development of a town. The place was nearly equidistant between northern Colorado's principal cities, Greeley and Fort Collins, and its station sat on the shores of one of the state's most picturesque lakes, teeming with waterfowl. Thus they hired H.P. Handy to survey and plat a town site, which he completed on November 20, 1882. Almost immediately, settlers in the area presented two different visions for Windsor, one as a thriving commercial center and the other as a quiet lakeside retreat. Herschel D. Sechner opened the first store in Windsor on December 11, 1882. It was a small wood frame building that stood for years just east of the Oddfellows Hall. Sechner quickly sold the business to Union Colony pioneer Lewis W. Teller, sowing the seeds for Windsor's most prominent retail business, the Windsor Mercantile Company. Yet no other person was more influential in the commercial development of early Windsor than John M. Cobbs. A native of Virginia, Cobbs found himself swept up in Colorado's 1859 gold rush before homesteading land east of present-day Windsor. He developed one of the most prosperous cattle feeding operations in Weld County. Cobbs then invested his profits in Windsor's commercial development, established a prosperous general store, and built many of the town's commercial storefronts, including the J.M. Cobbs Building at 406 Main Street, the two-story Cobbs-Peterson Block at 418 through 420 Main Street, and the J.M. Cobbs Block at 425 through 427 Main Street. Opposing John Cobbs and his fellow capitalists in Windsor was legendary hunter and trapper Robert Harris, proprietor of the Hotel de Harris, opened in 1882, and champion of Windsor as an undeveloped lakeside resort.
Hotel de Harris. Windsor is a famous resort. The lakes are well stocked with fish and ducks for lovers of rod and gun. Landlord Harris has a state reputation as an expert in both hunting and fishing, and his table and beds are a joy.
Planting trees and gardens around his hotel to block out Windsor's more unattractive commercial aspirations, the hunter-turned-hotelier sought a retreat, while merchants sought an ever-expanding market. Yet Harris certainly had his supporters.
Lake Hollister is a beautiful sheet of water, in extent covering several hundred acres of land, and forms one of Windsor's principal attractions. In the spring and fall, this lake is the home of the wild waterfowl, and we have frequently, in passing on the train, seen its smooth, glassy surface dotted with ducks and geese. It then becomes a favorite resort for sportsmen, so that the crack of a fowling piece is a familiar sound to people living near its borders. Fort Collins Courier, January 1884.
The opening of a sugar beet factory in 1903 decided Windsor's fate conclusively. It would be an agricultural industrial processing center, not a lakeside resort. Thus, in 1905, at the height of the sugar beet boom, Robert Harris sold his hotel property and eventually left Windsor for a more rustic retreat. The lakeside resort idea did not die with the closing of the Hotel de Harris. Various entrepreneurs and even the Windsor Chamber of Commerce revived the idea from time to time. Among the most notable plans were those of Vernon McKelvey, who built on the lake shore the Windsor Resort Grounds, an athletic facility and leisure park. He laid out ball fields and other athletic grounds, persuaded the town to move its bandstand from 5th Street to his park, and completed a dance pavilion and opera house. Despite these improvements, McKelvey's lakeside sports resort failed within a few years. In the end, Windsor's struggle for identity did not include the successful development of a lakeside leisure resort. Indeed, in the succeeding years, increasingly more businessmen demanded that the town exhibit and promote an air of hard work and success, not leisure.
Wouldn't it be a good scheme for Windsor to cut out all those trees on Main Street? Trees are all very nice, and their shade is real inviting on these hot days, but they suggest the leisure of a secluded summer resort. It is time for Windsor to come from under the shade and get to work. Roy Ray.